Welcome to the Centre for Progressive Change video podcast series. Today, Deirdre and I will be interviewing Professor Linda Hogan. Linda is a Professor of Ecumenics at the Irish School of Ecumenics here in Trinity College, Dublin. The article that we will be basing some of our discussion around is by Joel Rosenthal. It is Leadership as Practical Ethics from the Carnegie Council website. I put it on the Facebook page of the Leadership for Progressive Change group last night, and so it should be there for anyone who wants to access it. So the first question, in the model of the other interviews that we've done so far, the first question I'd like to ask Linda is how do you see the crisis we're in as having emerged from Irish society? What events, what factors, what social conditions?
Well, I suppose in a way there are economic and political and social and ethical factors involved. I suppose the first thing to say about the crisis in Ireland is that in one way it's not unique, because other countries and other societies are encountering elements of the similar sort of crisis. But I think what is different about the Irish crisis is that, first of all, the degree to which trust has been eroded in government, church, business, etc. is very profound. Secondly, the speed with which this has happened is again quite alarming. And thirdly, and probably most worryingly, is this vacuum, the extent of the vacuum that has been that has emerged is quite startling, and I do think that those three elements make the crisis in Ireland very unique, and in a way it shows how church, government, society, economics have all been radically undermined, and they've been undermined really by those who have been in positions of trust and authority. So really it is, I think, a systemic crisis that really is evident in all of our institutions, and in which the citizens of the country are really, I think, quite mystified as to how this trust eroded and collapsed so quickly, and also how it was that we as citizens allowed ourselves to be in a position wherein this has unfolded. And one of the things, I was reading a piece by Rowan Williams, the Archbishop of Canterbury, a number of months ago, and he asked the question, how is it that we allowed our judgment to become so skewed as a society? And I think that is one of the questions we do need to address. I
suppose a lot of people would look at where we are now with a certain degree of hindsight, and I know people would say that 2020 hindsight is something that everyone in Ireland seems to have now, which is not necessarily a good quality, but lots of people would say that there was an absence of ethics. I know that ties into the article that I've read by Joel Rosenthal. Could you go through, from your perspective, what some of the absence of ethics was, and what that led to?
Well, I suppose the first thing to say is that ethics really is a practice that asks, what is the good life? How do we live a good life? What are the values that underpin the good life? What are the trade-offs and compromises we need to make, and how should we make those judgments and decisions? So it really is a process of practical reasoning. That's really what ethics is in every domain of our lives. Now, I think from the Irish perspective, one of the issues, I think, is that certainly the dominant church, really the church that formed the sensibilities of the population, really never encouraged that. It actually discouraged it, thinking for oneself, developing a sense of personal responsibility, asking those questions, what do I value and why? What it prized above all else was conformity, rather than independent critical thinking about the values that one holds. And it also discouraged the emergence of alternative voices, the emergence of dissent, of disagreement. And it seems to me that really a healthy democratic society absolutely needs that kind of ethical debate on the most fundamental of issues, and as well as the policy issues that flow from that. So for example, what are the values that should guide our society? We'll probably talk about that as we talk about the future. But we've paid lip service to certain values like justice, fairness, equality, dignity of the person, etc., without really working through what that means in practice and what our various institutions need to do to embody that. So it seems to me that is the very profound crisis, at the heart of the failure. This failure at a personal level for individuals to really have cultivated personal responsibility. And as Rosenthal says, within the ethical domain, we think in terms of three dimensions: the personal dimension, the institutional dimension, so what are the systems that we adopt, what are the policies we promote, and there's been really serious failure at that element as well.
I think an interesting question, given your background, given your current position studying ecumenics, is what religion's role in this is. I mean, obviously Ireland is the statistics will show Ireland is becoming a more secular country. And I think that a lot of people would say that the voice of religion around the world has been moved into the area of social issues more and more and more. And so the voice of religion on ethical issues in terms of economics, which obviously we now consider to be an important contributor to the crisis, has been lost. I mean, do you feel that religions can reclaim their ethical high ground or their ethical role in society and issues like social justice and issues like the fair economic system and justice in economics?
I think they can, but I think in order to do that, they really have to restore their own credibility. And it's evident that all of the religious traditions have very strong positions on justice, equality, etc. But they have also all undermined those values themselves. So, I think it's very straightforward. They can become a voice, a significant and influential voice again, but only when and if they are prepared to have the light shone on them as well internally, and show that they too are embodying the values that they espouse.
I think that moves us nicely into the present and into how society is dealing with the crisis that we have now. The article was on ethics and practical leadership. And do you think that we have an absence of leadership in society now, and an absence of ethics in our leadership?
I do, yes, and I'm sure that there are other contributors to this process who can talk about the political and the economic dimensions of this sort of how the crisis is being dealt with. But I do think in terms of this absence of leadership and absence of ethical leadership, it is very evident, and I think it's evident in a way in three dimensions. First of all, there is an absence of a vision, and I think that's very problematic, because it seems to me that one of the things that people are concerned about is we're being asked to make a significant adjustment in terms of how we, in terms of the economy. But I think there's a suspicion that we're being asked to make this adjustment in order to return to business as usual. And it seems to me that people are not going to buy that. And the only way in which people will be prepared to make the hard sacrifices is if they believe that there is an alternative to the cycle of boom and bust that we've had. I think that's an absence of leadership in terms of articulating a vision of where we need to be in a way that is inspiring and inspirational for people. I think the second thing is that there's also an absence of confidence that the pain, if you call it that, will be shared in an equitable fashion. It seems to me that there are very many people who had no share in this boom of 15 years, and there's the real concern that these people are going to be the ones who are going to feel the pain disproportionately, and in a way are being punished now for the excesses of the majority. So I think again that we really do need a sense of leadership that says that where there is a nuanced approach to this question of how the cuts are going to be made, so that those who are vulnerable for whatever reason are protected. And I think also the third thing I would want to say about the absence of leadership is that there is, going back to the earlier point, a credibility gap. And it seems to me that it's not so much that people, that the moral authority of the government has been lost because of what they oversaw in the past. That might be part of it, but I think the biggest concern that people have is that there is a failure to recognise and to accept responsibility. I do think that if the government was prepared to say, we got it very fundamentally wrong, we made mistakes in these ways, rather than trying to export the blame to other institutions, patterns, practices, etc., I think that they would have a degree of moral authority that they don't have.
And I think it's quite relevant to one particular part in the article where Joel Rosenthal says that ethics is very often presented with difficult ethical questions. He gives the example of someone who has a sick mother but doesn't have the money to pay for the medicine who steals. Now this is not quite the same, but it seems to me that the ethical question that's being, well, the ethical template that's being put forward now in society by the government is that those who are in vulnerable positions in society, those who are on welfare, those who are on pensions, those who are young school children, will have to receive cuts in order to save the country, and that this is an ethical kind of paradigm that's being created. What's your thought on that? Thoughts on that ethical paradigm, and do you think that those kind of ethical questions are going to be more common in Ireland now in this space?
Well, I think they are going to be more common, but in a way, I think the way in which the choices are being framed actually puts us into a false dichotomy or polarity. And in a way, what the article is also saying, I think, is that the way in which we frame the questions actually determines the way in which we will resolve them. So we are often being faced with false choices, cuts, or the IMF. to use this week's sort of
post-term. Yes.
Yeah.